it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to be having a look at the Cut and Emboss embossing folder. So obviously this does both. You can see that there's a little gap there on the front where the cutting impression is going to go, and then inside is the die itself, which is just held on by like some double-sided tape, and so that makes it easy for you to be able to remove it. But you can see it creates the perfect gap there in amongst all of these bricks. So this is the one that I'm going to be using today. I'm going to start off by using some craft coloured paper, and I'm going to have kind of a smaller card. I believe this is maybe a 4x4 inch card, and I'm just kind of figuring out where I want it to go, where it's going to be centered in the middle. I did decide for the first part here I was going to remove the cutting die from the center, so that's as easy as pulling it out and then just taking off the little bit of double-sided tape that's kind of holding it in there. I found I got the best impression when I ran them through separately. However, they definitely did work fine when I ran them both through together as well, so that's up to you. So I ran through the craft cardstock through my Cuttlebug machine, and now I'm just literally using all the browns in my stash, and I also have the Hero Hues. This is the Unicorn White Pigment ink, and I just want to add a little bit of colour and texture to the bricks, just so they show up a little bit better and there's a little bit more interest to them rather than just being flat craft cardstock. So the easiest way for me to do this is I just use the finger daubers, and the finger daubers are from AliExpress. And there's no rhyme or reason or pattern to what I'm doing. I'm just going over very lightly. I don't want to press too hard because I'm trying to kind of catch the top of the bricks. I'm not worried about going into the middle of the center part of the embossing folder because I will be cutting that out. And just now I'm adding a little red tinge to go with the bricks as well. Then, just to add some kind of little highlights and things, I go over it with a little bit of white pigment ink, and I kind of smudge it in with my finger a little bit. I find that kind of spreads it around a little bit more evenly. So that is the finished part of my bricks. Then I'm going to put the cutting die in the middle, and it fits perfectly. It fits right in there. Hold it in place with a little bit of tape and then run it through my die cutting machine, and it comes out looking pretty cool. So that is kind of our background created, and this die and embossing folder just leaves itself super wide open for so many possibilities. I mean, you could have anything coming out of the center here. It would be heaps of fun. Balloons, birthdays, you could have any occasion at all. I decided that I wanted a black background to this, kind of like you were looking through a tunnel or something. So that's why I went with black for the background, and as I said, I do have a 4x4 Nina Solar White 110 pound card base. So now this is some black fun foam that I have here, and I am just going to use the same cutting die to cut a hole in it, and this way I will be able to pop up my little card front here. Now originally I was going to do something slightly different, but because I ended up doing it this way, I am going to glue down my card front first, and then I will cut out the card front later on. However, you could also do it the other way around and just cut out around the square and then glue it to the back of your card front as well. Either is just fine. So whilst I leave that to dry for a little minute, I'm going to work on the elements that will go in the center of my brick wall. I'm going to use this My Favorite Things monster stamp set here, and I'm just going to use this one little monster here. I also have the coordinating dies. I don't think that this stamp set is still available. I'll have a look, but I don't think it is. It is an older one. I'm going to use my MISTI stamping tool to make this a little bit easier because I want to have kind of two colors on this little monster. So I'm using the Catherine Paula Tiki torch and the Tiara. Now that's one way that you can do it. You can just put the ink pads straight onto the stamp and you get a fairly good result. If you would like a slightly more blended look, I use my finger daubers to kind of put the ink on the stamp, and that gives me a much more blended look. But either way, works perfectly fine, so whichever one you find easiest or works best for you is good. But I'm going to do a couple of them because usually I end up ruining one or mucking up one. So I'm stamping two, but I definitely only need one for this project. So I find the easiest way is to use the finger daubers, so that's what I'm going to go with. And using the MISTI, I know I can always stamp it again if I feel like I didn't quite get the even coverage that I wanted the first time around. It's not perfectly necessary, and you can line up using an acrylic block as well, so just use what you have on hand. I am going to die cut these out before I add in the details part of the stamp. I find that by doing it this way I tend to line things up much better, but either you can stamp the details part first as well. So I'm going to run that through my Cuttlebug machine, and he looks pretty cute already, but he will look even better when I add in his little eyes and antennae or whatever they are that comes out the top of his head. As I said earlier, the options for this cut and embossing folder are absolutely endless. If you already have this folder, or if you purchase it and end up using it, I would absolutely love to see your projects. Please come and join our Facebook page. I will leave a link in the description box down below, and that is a really easy way that I can talk with you guys and you can share all of your projects that you have made with me. I love seeing what you guys are creating, and we have an amazing supportive group over there. The next thing I'm doing with this card is I'm using a little bit of masking paper to freehand cut a circle. You could definitely use a die cut. And this is my background piece for my card front. And I'm taking a little bit of that same unicorn pigment ink that I had earlier on and a finger dauber, and I'm just going around this circle. So I did mention earlier that I wanted to create kind of a light at the end of the tunnel kind of look, or you know, that this little monster was peeking out of a pipeline from behind the brick wall or something, something to that effect anyhow. So I'm using a little bit of this white pigment ink to create a little bit of light, I guess. Again, nothing is realistic, and this is just not my forte in card making, so I think it ends up okay in the end. But I'm sure that there are other people who are doing a much better job of portraying what I'm trying to get across here. But anyway, so that kind of creates the little light in the background look. And then it's just a matter of cutting and snipping and putting all of these parts together, really. So I need to figure out where my little monster is kind of going to sit, and I think I'm just going to have him peeking through with part of his body behind it. I'm cutting off the excess black fun foam that I put on the back to give it a little bit of dimension. This fun foam is from Elena Craft Store, and again I'll link it down below. And then it kind of all looks like it's going to line up pretty well. I actually ended up doing it on a spare piece of black paper because it didn't line up perfectly with where my background piece was, so I just cut another piece for that, and that's why it looks terrible at this point, but nobody will see this part as usual. So I'm just going to place it exactly where I want it. I want it kind of slightly up towards the top a little bit so that the little monster is not covering all of it up. And I really like how it's coming along at this point. It looks good. And all card makers and even scrapbookers or any kind of thing like that, we all know that we start off with a plan, and quite often, maybe most often, it doesn't quite go to plan and we go off schedule a little bit. But with this one, it pretty much went exactly how I expected it to, which is always makes the process a little bit easier. I'm adding a little bit of foam tape just to the top part of the monster, again to kind of have him popping out from the background a little bit. And I'm able to just tuck him under the bricks there and press it down when I've got him all in place. Then I'll add the background piece to my card base. And if you were organised, I guess you could do this all in one with the little piece that has the tunnel light on it. But as I said, it didn't quite line up perfectly, so I ended up using another piece of black paper, but that's okay. And then from there, I want to stamp my sentiment inside the card. I learnt my lesson, which you guys saw a couple of card videos ago, about dropping my ink pad. So before I add everything on the front, I am going to stamp the inside part, and it all went well, so then I am going to add on the card front onto the card base. Again, I'm just using some liquid glue. This is my favorite go-to glue. It's in a glue bottle from AliExpress, and the glue inside is the Ranger Multi-Medium in a matte finish. And this dries really nice and clear. It doesn't leave any outline or marks or anything, if anything spilled out the side, so that's why it's my favourite go-to glue. Then I'm going to use the Jelly Roll glaze pen, and I'm just going to go over all the parts that I stamped in black, and this just gives it a very light shine and a tiny wee bit of dimension you can see there. I really like these finishing details on a card, and sometimes they can just really make a simple card stand out a little bit more. I did go over his eyes, but then I decided that this little guy needed some googly eyes, so I'm putting a little drop of glue on each one, and then I have a couple of googly eyes that will go on there, and again, I think that just adds to the playful nature of the card. So that is pretty much my card all finished for today. This is a super cute card that you could use for many different occasions. This cut and emboss folder was really fun to work with today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks, bye!